In our review of Back 4 Blood, we very much ripped into the game from the get-go.
It's not as great as I hoped for, and generally that is a sentiment shared by the majority of players.
Making it very clear that we approached the topic as people who were promised a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead and got something very different, to be diplomatic. Fanboys were mad, most people agreed, and others sat somewhere in the middle ground. And while I was reading through the comments under the Back 4 Blood review, our editor Lone was constantly mentioning, there is another zombie game, but he just can't remember the name of it until he saw the F-Cancer bundle at the Humble Bundle store, and then the light bulb went off. He was thinking about World War Z. And since that game was at the time also promised to us as a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead, we thought it's a perfect candidate to have a look at. And while we, just as with the Back 4 Blood video, have a lot of things to complain about, came to a rather different conclusion than we did on Back 4 Blood. World War Z is based on the 2013 movie World War Z, starring Brad Pitt. The whole thing is based on a book of, again, the same name. I mean World War Z, not Brad Pitt. I rewatched the movie for this review, and well, I was a bit underwhelmed, especially the ending is miserable. I remembered it better than it actually was. The movie has some issues, but it's a zombie movie, so let's suspend our disbelief for a bit and just get on with it, because, well, it's unrealistic from the get-go. As for the original inspiration, the book, I haven't read it. If you have, please tell us in the comment section what you think of it. This review of World War Z is based on World War Z Aftermath, an expansion that greatly enhances the experience. The game tries to translate the atmosphere of the movie into the medium of video game, and that works for the most part. So what we have here is not what we Germans call a Lizenzgurke, because it does enough things right to be considered something above trash level, but below Left 4 Dead. So it's still vastly superior to Back 4 Blood. No, jokes aside, Back 4 Blood is not that horrible. Saber Interactive's World War Z the game is, if you break it down, a 4-player zombie co-op third-person shooter, consisting of running from point A to B and having multiple standoffs with huge hordes. This description doesn't quite do it justice though, as it has some elements that make it stand out from the crowd. And compared to the zombie co-op shooter king Left 4 Dead, it has enough of its own ideas to not be a simple clone. A criticism that was actually levied against World War Z at the time. The first impression is rather positive. Of course, upon closer inspection it isn't flawless. So let us dive deeper into it and see if it's worth your money or if the flaws overwhelm the positive aspects and you should rather stick to Left 4 Dead, or Back 4 Blood if you so desire.
I got us an auto turret.
As I already mentioned in the introduction, World War Z is a classic third-person shooter without a cover system like Gears of War, Uncharted and so on. Ever since the Aftermath update, a first-person mode is also introduced. Although you can't really aim through the sights. Aiming in closer will give you 1.6 in Counter-Strike Source flashbacks. Because aiming does this. A cool thing, only one player needs to own the add-on to play with friends, so that's kind of customer friendly there. In the 7 3 to 4 chapter-long campaigns, 2 of which came with the add-on, you have to fight your way through a world overrun by zombie hordes and complete various objectives. World War Z offers significantly more single-player or co-op content than many other zombie co-op shooters out there. It can hold a cable to Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, not counting the workshop though. While in the first campaign your 4 protagonists have to fight their way through New York in a very classic zombie scenario, you try to protect a scientist in Jerusalem who is researching a cure for the zombie virus in the very next campaign. The game leads you to Italy, France and Russia, the latter one even twice. As for locations, World War Z wins. There isn't a zombie game out there that offers such a variety of locations, at least as far as I know. It may be just an impression, but most zombie games and movies take place in the United States. Not that the US isn't a beautiful country, but there's an entire world out there to be massacred by zombies. Despite the often beautiful visual diversity like these Japanese suburbs, the missions always follow a strict template we know from any other zombie shooter. You move from point A to B to C and so on. And sometimes they try to mix it up and have you defend or escort an NPC or vehicle. Standard stuff. Where the fun comes in is when you have to really hold down a certain location. At these places you will find boxes, In them, a few gadgets that make defending a lot easier for you. Amongst these gadgets are machine guns, a mortar, an automatic sentry gun, barbed wire and fences. These defenses help immensely when it comes to holding off a horde, and they need to be placed strategically. Some classes even augment the MG or mortar. And yes, there are classes, but more on this later. Despite the fact that these defenses can only be set up in predetermined locations, the positioning is important. It just really bugs me that the machine gun has a way too small field of fire, especially considering it's on a 360-degree mount. These scenarios, these defensive scenes, are fun but nothing groundbreaking. Even with the varied locations, this sort of gameplay on its own would get pretty boring quickly, because it of course lacks the depth to be a real zombie defense build-up thing. It's not a base builder, which would have been a pretty cool gameplay shift at least for one mission. Only the very last campaign adds a significant gameplay twist on the established formula, with the cold weather slowly freezing you to death if you stay outside for too long. This adds a sense of urgency to carry on that sometimes clashes with the next gameplay mechanic we will discuss, and this makes for pretty fun gameplay because you need to weigh, rush or slow. What I'm talking of for the additional spice to be added is that you need to be stealthy from time to time. Sneaking around zombies and putting on silencers, and yes, the game actually calls them silencers, becomes mandatory on higher levels of difficulty. Because if you have a weapon that is not suppressed, you attract more and more hordes of zombies and you become overrun. It can really get your adrenaline pumping when you suddenly hear the oops through the headset because some of your teammates have triggered something and the next horde is rushing in. Most campaigns feature distinctive buildings and landscapes. The Moscow campaign boasts the Kremlin, in Rome you can see the Colosseum, but the really famous places only serve as a backdrop. You're never really close to historic buildings. In the Japan mission, I couldn't tell where in Japan we are right now. I recognize the architecture, and the streets are covered in Japanese posters. How cool would it be to take a historic last stand at the Shibuya crossing, or talking about interacting with famous places, how about rushing the Red Square in Moscow, climb atop the mausoleum and punch out Zombie Lenin? That would make it terrific. Unfortunately, the fighting mostly takes place in narrow streets that are either painted to look like the US or some other places. The quality of assets and props also does fluctuate. For example, while the Leclerc tank looks like the real thing, they somehow manage to screw up the scaling. Some cars are realistically proportioned, others way too big. One thought that we had while playing is that it would have been cool if the developers would have gone more into the specific locations and maybe go through the effort of country-specific weapons for the game. For example, in Japan, there are significantly fewer firearms, but maybe more melee weapons. In France, more improvised weapons, and so on. Right now in the game, you have the potential to have every weapon in every level. In some countries there are very strict gun laws, especially Japan, so this kind of variation would have been interesting, but I get how others might really dislike it. In the Back 4 Blood review I criticized that there are just way too many guns all over the place, and I must concede, okay, I can kind of accept that in a zombie apocalypse set in the US you can find guns in every corner. But I find it weird that there are guns all over Italy, France and especially Japan. And we are not just talking small guns here, no, heavy stuff such as assault rifles with explosive ammunition, anti-material sniper rifles and heavy machine guns as well as SMGs. And we will further talk about those weapons very soon, but first let's have a look at the characters. Because unfortunately the characters are a bit underdeveloped. What I find very nice is that you play country-specific characters in each level. In Japan you play Japanese people. In France you play French people, but because of that we switch characters often, only allowing the game to scrape along the surface of character development. You do have a very diverse cast here and I already have a few favorites, but there's very little connection being built between the characters and the players. As you switch characters with every campaign, you never have the chance to get to know them as intimately as you do with the Left 4 Dead characters. An example? Sergei Popov, a former very brutal criminal who fought faith and became an Orthodox priest. Yeah, crazy story. I mostly know that stuff about him because I watched the story video. That's the way they chose to flesh out the characters. Their in-game voice lines mostly fade into the background noise. The way the game is built, deeper characters were hardly possible. I'm fully aware that World War Z isn't Mass Effect, and I don't expect it to be. I don't even want to start flirting with most of the characters there. Although, Popov? Popov. Well, still Fuck. Still, I think it's a shame. In Left 4 Dead, I know every character. They all have interesting personalities which are shown or explained over the course of the different campaigns. These people are locals. They are fighting on their home turf in these campaigns, and they comment on that from time to time. Saber Interactive has given a lot of potential away here.
My parents got on the ship yesterday. They'll have arrived by now.
We'll be needing people like you when we get there. And when we return.
And speaking about wasted potential, let's talk about the weapons, with which Saber Interactive prove that they have good ideas but don't implement them very well. Depending on your class, you start with a secondary, primary, and depending on your level, even a heavy weapon. With each kill, your weapon gets XP, which again enables you to buy upgrades with the in-game currency. But those who expected a typical upgrade system or even a gunsmith option will be very disappointed here. Each weapon has up to 5 levels, and depending on the weapon, you can choose one of 2 options per level. Some of these upgrades are rather special and sometimes useless. I would love to build a powerful sniper rifle with only iron sights or maybe a 3x zoom maximum. You know, in a game where the enemy doesn't shoot back and is standing around mindlessly, super long-range accuracy isn't really needed. But I can't have that. What I can have is a laser on a sort of shotgun with a suppressor and mounted optics. Pretty sure that thing would obscure your vision when you take aim. I wish I could build my weapons the way I want them. The weapon upgrade system doesn't have to be as deep and complex as Tarkov, but at least Battlefield 3 should be the standard. Even Back 4 Blood was more flexible in that regard. Outside of stat improvements, the uselessness of the upgrades is especially disappointing ever since they introduced the aforementioned first-person mode. And when you play that first-person mode, you really notice that the guns were meant to be played with the third-person view, because the animations for first-person are at best sluggish. A video game will of course never give you that oomph that you will feel firing a real weapon. But this game has a particular big lack of oomph. So stay as far away from the guns as you can, meaning third-person view it is. A few moments ago I mentioned classes. Of these, the player can choose one of 8 for the co-op mode. All have their place, but some are significantly better than others. Though that's not informed by hard facts, merely experience. So it is possible that people who have absolutely figured out the game's meta are able to build amazing loadouts with every class, but I really didn't feel it. Of course, if you have figured out the absolute best formula, please tell us in the comment section down below, I'm willing to learn. These classes not only define your starting equipment, but also give you passive and active advantages. While the class skills for levels 1, 10, 20 and 30 are preset and are the strongest, you can or must decide on a skill for every 3 levels. This whole selection process is poorly communicated to the player. The interface could have been designed much better, because my friends and I have wasted a lot of money on poorly selected skills. So I guess we had poor selection skills. Furthermore, the usefulness of these skills vary a lot between classes. Some classes are really a must-have. The Fixer, for example, can not only give you extra explosive ammunition permanently, but also as a breaching charge to blast open locked rooms for extra equipment. The Medic, on the other hand, is just nice to have. The HP boost is cool, but not nearly as strong as it would have to be to make it a viable alternative to other classes. But that's just my personal impression here. Me personally, well, I go for the gunslinger for the most part, because, you know, if gun don't work, use more gun. And in a zombie apocalypse, you can't go wrong with gun. So let's get to the zombies. The zombies are the selling point of the game, or rather, the mass thereof. In a dev diary, it is said that the idea or the passion for this game goes back to the CEO of Saber Interactive, Matthew Karch, who says that when he saw the scene from the World War Z movie where the zombies scale the wall into Jerusalem, he thought that, I have to make a game like this.
The origin is really just one guy's passion. It was Matt saying, I want to make this game.
There's a certain scene in the movie where they are in Jerusalem and swarms of zombies climb over a wall. And when I saw that, that's when I realized that we needed to make this game. Because if we can recreate this, then we have something on our hands.
To realize this, they built their engine, the Swarm engine, that manages to display hundreds of zombies on screen at the same time, and it is impressive. It even looks fairly decent for the most part. And the sound engine used also is passable. Of course, the game is now a bit dated. But still, for the first time you see it, and even after the hundreds of times the hordes rush towards you, it is impressive. It is truly apocalyptic. Then again, here comes the problem. To be able to display the mass of zombies, Saber Interactive had to use tricks. The game was developed for the last console generation, PS4 and Xbox One. So the LOD is very extreme. After a few meters, the zombies almost look like 2D flat textures. Glitches appear here and there. They often slide over the ground because the engine cheaps out on animations, and unfortunately, killed zombies disappear extremely quick. Left 4 Dead has a leg up on them here, but then again, Left 4 Dead has destruction on a much smaller scale. This all means that even if you just had a standoff in which you blew away thousands of zombies, you won't see any of them in the end. Even particles like blood are kept within limits, and the gore is not on the level of Left 4 Dead or even Killing Floor 2, but it is still quite passable. If this game was optimized for the PC with modern hardware, it would be glorious. By the way, the game developer did later work on Killing Floor 2, and that shows. They are a fitting bunch. But enough about graphics, back to the zombies. In addition to the normal zombies, there are an assortment of special ones, including a zombie that jumps at you, the Lurker, one that charges at you and can withstand a lot, here called the Bull, a mix of tank and charger from Left 4 Dead. You got the Infector, that, well, pretty much does what you think he does, and then the most annoying thing, the Screamer. It works exactly as you would think, calling in hordes of zombies. We already addressed this kind of zombie in the Back 4 Blood review, so I won't go over that again, I just have a look at it. It's in the upper right corner. Left 4 Dead generally solves this all much better. The special zombies there have a personality, their own music, easily recognizable cues, and here they are just drop on top, nothing special. You can clearly see that the regular zombies, the normal ones, were the primary focus here. It's also a pity that the developers didn't bother or didn't have the time to adopt the zombies to the location, so the zombies look the same all over the world. The developers didn't even bother to translate the police lettering into the local language for the Bull. You know, that Riot Corp zombie thing. Next up we got the Horde mode and multiplayer, and we can do this quick because they are rather shallow and pedantic. The developers' plan for the multiplayer is shallow and pedantic. I agree, shallow and pedantic. I agree as well, shallow and pedantic. Everything alright, Esk? Well, since you asked, developer, I find this multiplayer rather shallow and pedantic. What is this, you're gonna talk down to everyone just because you had a mildly successful Back 4 Blood review?
Perhaps.
The Horde mode is outright boring. You always play on the same map. There are only 2 rough directions of attack, and you have to fight an ever-growing horde of zombies using the same defenses that you have in the campaign. This mode is also full of bugs and, yeah, dull. Why the developers didn't adapt the dozens of campaign maps is a mystery to me. The PvP multiplayer is absolutely third-person multiplayer standard. After 3 rounds I stopped playing, and I'm usually a PvP fan. The Horde mode and PvP have been done way better in other games. I could do without, play World War Z for the regular campaign, but be sure to play with actual humans, because the AI buddies the game gives you, they are rather dim-witted boobs. In summary, depending on what you are looking for, World War Z is a passable to good game. It is one of the better zombie co-op shooters, and I recommend it to anyone who has played enough Left 4 Dead and just wants some more new stuff. It is rivaling, if not better, than Back 4 Blood. Unfortunately, World War Z suffers from many stupid design decisions. A lot of cool locations outside of the United States are a lot of fun and are great for a change of pace, but outside of the Kamchatka campaign, they are just a backdrop for the same gameplay. Yes, you do have a few things that stand out here and there, but that's it. The diverse cast is great, but please give them more personality. They are as bland as toast. Being able to upgrade your weapons is cool, but it would be way cooler if I could choose the direction I go with. The zombies, especially in the large crowds, they are awesome, but they don't look that good. The bodies disappear too quickly, and the special enemies come across as tacked on. And the big issue for me, there is no modding, and I have to really emphasize this. Modding in such a game is always the best. In addition to that, there are sometimes issues with servers. They are overloaded, just crash, and the best case is just playing with friends. Because the AI they programmed into the game is just crap. And an overarching issue is the inspiration of World War Z. If you build an entire game around a cool scene in a movie, then that aspect may be very cool, but it may not be enough for an entire game. They saw this and thought, let's make a cool co-op game out of this. Like Left 4 Dead, but with way more zombies and climbing walls. This one mechanic or event is not enough to hide or make up for the bland design decisions. So if Saber Interactive would make a World War Z 2 that tackles these many weaknesses, throws out the shallow multiplayer and incorporates modding, I would be very happy, because then we would have an almost perfect zombie shooter. But as it is now, I can only say it's a decent shooter. For fans of the genre, worth a look. For just a few bucks, you definitely can't go wrong, and the game is old, so you will find it on sale multiple times a year. Grab a few buddies and have some short-lasting fun. And at this point, all I have left to say is, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video to be informative, and if you did, you know what I would like you to do. Give the video a like, consider subscribing for future content, and if you absolutely love what we do, consider supporting us on Patreon, as our loyal supporters there got to see this video well before anyone else. These wonderful people are to them and everyone else, thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Until then, have a nice day, and as always, goodbye and guten Tag.
Mark the one in place. You ain't my world now!